So I'm going to start with a little social experiment, all right? So what I'd like is for you all to work with me here. I'd like for everybody to stand up. All right, and then what I'd like is I'd kind of like you to shift your body weight just slightly to the right. Good, good. Now back to center. Now I'd like for you to take a deep breath. Exhale. Okay, be seated. All right, now, thank you for the experiment. Now, what I want you to take from today is this, that Mark Bowe just walked on the stage, brought you to your feet, moved you, and then I took your breath away. All right, I'm going to talk about the front porch, and I'm going to start by reading from a book by Ray Bradbury. No front porches. My uncle says there used to be front porches, and people sat there sometimes at night, talking when they wanted to talk, rocking, and not talking when they didn't want to talk. Sometimes they just sat there and thought about things, turned things over. My uncle says they got rid of the front porches because they didn't look well. But my uncle says that was merely rationalizing it. The real reason, hidden underneath, might be they didn't want people sitting like that, doing nothing, rocking, talking. That was the wrong kind of social life. People talked too much, and they had time to think. So they ran off with the porches. Ray Bradbury wrote that in 1953 in Fahrenheit 451. A futuristic novel warning of the breakdown of the American society. And here we are, 60 years later, and to think that Bradbury called it? Well, he did. The front porch is gone. And with it went the summer evenings of rocking your children, watching the fireflies dot the lawn. Gone are the days of the mail carrier climbing the steps to hand you the mail. There's no more familiar thump of the Sunday paper hitting worn wood, and there's no thundering of dirty feet coming to see if your child can play. And with all of that went waving to your neighbors, to somehow not even looking at your neighbors, to not even knowing your neighbors. Do you know your neighbors? Do you trust your neighbors? Or do you think to yourself and peer out the window and think, who are those people? I better lock the door. The front porch is gone, and we have replaced it with suburban isolation. That's not human. We're human. We're social creatures. So what do? We turn off the lights, we shut the door, and we log into Facebook. A social community that used to be just steps from our front door. We don't know our neighbors, but we're allowing 500 acquaintances access into the most intimate corners of our lives. We invite them into our kitchens. Look what I made for lunch. We invite them into our bedrooms. We invite them into our marriages. We invite them into our children's bedrooms. And at the same time, if we hear raised voices next door, we're likely to think to ourselves or even say it out loud, hey, that's none of my business. And it's this type of attitude that allows predators to hide in plain sight. It's this type of attitude that allows child abuse and neglect. And it allows women to be kidnapped and held for 10 years against their will in a neighborhood. It allows women to be kidnapped and held in a backyard in a tent with a child in a suburb. So we've got to change this. You know, how do we change this? I've always heard it takes a village to raise a child, but it's going to take more than a village of brick walls and vinyl siding. We have to be more neighborly. We have to give more hugs. We got to make more pies. We've got to have more front yard cookouts and fewer backyard cookouts. I don't know a whole lot of things in this world, but there is one thing that I do know is that it's really hard to ignore somebody that just fixed your supper. It seems to me that when there was a front porch, everything made just a little bit more sense. The front porch was a room. It was a transitional place between inside and outside. It was the public face of the family. It was a place for social gatherings and friendly transactions. It was the space that was between our inner sanctums and the broader outside world. And in that space, there was room for asking if everything is okay. And now we don't have room for asking if everything is okay. But we spend so much time celebrating the minutia of our inner sanctums. And that strikes me as bipolar, really. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite quotes from Einstein. I fear the day that technology will surpass our human interaction. The world will have a generation of idiots. And here we are. I'm talking to you today. I'm not an architect. I'm not a designer, but I'm coming to you from the perspective from a man that's knocked on a lot of doors. And I've sat on a lot of porches. For 16 years, I owned a company that specialized in the recovery and restoration of 19th century building materials. I took down about 400 antique cabins and barns over those 16 years. And our work is found in museums from coast to coast and on the covers of magazines all the way in Belgium. And every time we'd go to one of these houses, every time we'd go to one of these cabins, there'd be 6 of 8 of us guys standing on the porch, and we wondered, what was it like to live here? What was it like to be on this porch? We would wonder where they gathered their water, where they grew their garden, and what did they use all these outbuildings for? And when we started taking down these buildings, we started with the porch. So we'd take off the roof, and then we'd make our way down to the wide plank, foot-worn floorboards, and when we would pull up those boards, we would reveal the dirt that had not seen the light of day in 200 years. And then we all became, hillbilly archaeologists, really. We'd all go in there and we'd figure out what we could find. And we found marbles, and we found wooden toys, and we found tools and shoes and dolls and weapons and guns. We found everything. We knew exactly what it was like to be on that porch. Well, in 2008, the housing market tanked and the sale of antique cabins and barns fell by about 50%. So I figured, I needed to do something else. I needed another business model. I need to have a business that is recession-proof. So I did what every other blue-collar guy in the country did. I started myself an insurance agency. I figured I needed to either learn how to do taxes or build caskets or sell insurance. So I started an insurance agency. And when you're an insurance agent, you have to drive to the houses and you have to inspect them, and you have to take a picture of the front of the house, you have to take a picture of the back of the house, and for the first time in my life, I was driving through neighborhoods with more of a critical eye on modern subdivisions, and I was astounded and really I was blown away by the lack of connectedness and by the lack of emotion conveyed in houses. And so I've always heard in architecture the theory, form follows function, and then more recently it's been form follows function and incorporate sustainability. But shouldn't we incorporate emotion into the design of a house? What emotion does a house convey? I mean, being welcome in a house is much more than just a sign on the mat. It's a feeling you get when you walk up to the house. And if you've ever gone door to door selling Boy Scout cookies or promoting a cause or Girl Scout or for whatever reason, you know that there's a feeling of welcome when you approach the house. So if I could take a minute to relate to you the emotions conveyed with a house in the form of body language, I'm going to give that an attempt. So a house that has a big front porch in human body language, this is what this house says to me. This house says, come here, give me a big old hug. You want something to eat? How's your mom? That's what that house says to me. And, a house that has maybe just, a little stoop on the front, or maybe even the image of the house that I showed earlier, that big brick house. It didn't really have a porch. This is what it says to me. It says this. There's no really, you can't walk around there. You don't really even have room to get out of the rain. So here's what it says. It says, I'm here, but I'm not that interested in what's happening. And then the houses you've seen with the garage, facing forward. So this is the public face that we choose to put out there. This is what we're displaying, is that garage door. This is what that says to me. It says this. It says, I'm not involved in the community. It tells me that if you want to talk to me, you're going to have to walk around the side, or you're going to have to come around back or something. So that's what I mean by the emotions of our house. And our grandfathers and grandmothers, the greatest generation, they spent quality time together on the front porch. It's where they discussed the labors of the day. And that was regardless of socioeconomic status. I mean, this picture is of sharecroppers, and there's 3 generations there. And a family pet and probably a neighbor or a crazy cousin or something would be on that porch. We're losing our ability to be connected with each other. And how did we get here? How did this all happen? Well, I know how it happened. I watched it happen. I'll tell you exactly how we got here. The air conditioner, that's how we got here. Now, I know there's an industrial revolution and that, we've got, more building materials and there are transient workers and we're driving cars and all that more. But this is how we got here. And here's how I know, because I witnessed it. Last year in West Virginia, we all learned a new word. Everybody. That word is derecho. Or Derico, Delreco. Look, we all didn't really learn how to say it. But here's what we do know. We know that those letters, they spell great big old storm. Because that's what we had. We had ourselves a great big old storm, and it was for 8 days. And we didn't have power for 8 days. Some of those days we didn't have water, but for those 8 days, it was 100 degrees. It was the most beautiful, well-connected neighborhood. Norman Rockwell couldn't have drawn it, illustrated it, or imagined it. Because for those 8 days in 100-degree temperature, we saw people outside on their porches. We saw people in their yards. People walked the streets and kept asking each other, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? And it's a shame that it took a natural disaster for us to get to that point, but it is an embarrassment that we had a second chance to be connected and we blew it. And here's how we blew it. Because on the 8th day, boom, the power came back on. Everybody put their caves to a cool 68, and I haven't seen some of those people since the storm. But, I guess if I was a real good neighbor, I'd go check on them. So, also, prior to World War II, houses were built by hand with real wood, and nails were pounded by hand, and there was a sense of craftsmanship. And today, we don't have that. We have houses that are assembled. We have houses that are made of acrylic and formica and linoleum and vinyl and on and on and on and on. So we've lost the difference between what is real and what is man-made. Without a porch, we're not even connected to nature at that point. We have become isolated. We're isolated in a world where every kid gets a trophy and conflicts are handled with anonymity, and the emotions of our youth can be summed up in 150 characters. We're isolated. from each other. Our kids don't even know other kids. And I tell you what, in 1979, the word play date did not exist. You just went outside and played with whoever else was playing outside. It was pretty simple. And as parents, we're just creating more work for ourselves. We're not available as parents to lead by examples on conflict resolution or even random acts of kindness. We're losing the ability to communicate in person. We're out of balance. We're out of balance between personal communication and digital communication. And we're getting really way out of sync. One of the things, I got to say, I've been out of the dating game for a long time. But when I think about an example of how out of balance we are, I think about, Happy Days and Richie Cunningham, walking a girl up the front porch, and there's all these emotions going on, the heart's beating, and there's butterflies in the stomach, and he's waiting for the right opportunity, the right moment where he can get an innocent kiss goodnight. Now, I think that with a good high-speed internet connection, you can get to second base with a woman and never see the whites of her eyeballs. It just doesn't make sense. The weather. This is one that just irritates me. My wife, I love her. So here's what happens. She tells me how cold it's going to be before she has put her own 2 feet on the floor. And I'm the kind of guy that walks outside in my sock feet, and I'll determine for myself whether or not I'm going to need to wear thermal underwear. We're losing our balance. And while I'm outside on the porch in my sock feet, I might see a neighbor that's going by walking the dog or getting some exercise. I might see somebody that particular morning needs a wave and a smile. And there's some mornings that I need a wave and a smile. So how do we fix it? Well, it's pretty simple. Moving forward, let's build houses with front porches. And let's build houses that connect ourselves with each other and with our community. And for now, look, if you've got a front porch, go sit on it. And if you don't have a front porch, have yourself a front yard cookout and invite some of the neighbors. But most importantly, take with you for the rest of your days on this earth a front porch attitude. A front porch attitude that embraces all the ones you love and all the ones that you're yet to meet. My name's Mark Bowe, and I got a great big front porch hug for all of you. Thank you.